When you think about your retirement number, you're probably thinking about how much money you need to retire. Well, I think there's another number that's far more important. Find out today. Welcome to Retire Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Keil, and we're here to help you create your dream retirement. Today, we're talking about the most important number in your retirement planning, and it's probably not the number that you think it is. You're probably thinking the number of how much money do I need to retire, but I think it's a different number. It's a different number called the retirement longevity number. And we're talking here about things in my book, Retire Today, coming out on September 2nd. Although this is the last week to get on the pre-sale list. So email me podcast@kylfp.com if you want to get on the pre-sale list before September 2nd. So I wrote this book, Retire Today, showing you the 5 steps you need to take to create your retirement master plan. And as you're reading the book, as you're reading the steps, you get to step 5 and you're thinking, okay, I'm ready to go. Let's start with step 1. And I encourage you to start with step 0. Step 0 comes before step 1, and that's all about what's called your retirement longevity number. So I'll be sharing a bit with that about the book today. It's chapter 11, the most important number, and it's the retirement longevity number is what I call it, because I want to talk about 2 parts of your retirement. A lot of times when you're doing your retirement planning, you're focused on how long you might live in retirement. But part of your retirement length, your retirement longevity, is when's the starting point of your retirement. You've got to get both of those right. And by getting it right, I don't mean you get the exact number. No one knows for sure how long they're going to live. And as you'll find out, a lot of people don't know for sure when they're actually going to retire. So I talk about the retirement longevity number quite a bit. You've probably heard me talk about it before, because how long you live in retirement, that's the most important number, right? You live 1 year or 50 years. That's a huge number that goes into the multiplication of how much money do you need in retirement. And I think you really ought to focus on this retirement longevity number. Getting that right is helpful in your retirement, and it's helpful to consider what happens when you get things wrong, and how you approach other decisions with retirement will have a different effect. You'll have a different viewpoint once you've actually gotten an accurate estimate of your retirement longevity number and considered what happens if you die before then, if your retirement longevity is less than, and what happens if your retirement longevity is more than what you had predicted. So I'm going to talk about here. We've got quite a few things in there. One of them I start out with, and I hate telling people that they're wrong, but I start out sharing that the retirement longevity number, your life expectancy that you are thinking of right now, is probably wrong. And it's wrong for a few reasons, but the number one reason why your life expectancy estimate is wrong is you're getting it from the newspaper. You're looking at the news articles, and it says the average life expectancy in America is 78 years old. And you think, well, on average, I'll make it 78. That is wrong, because that's the average life expectancy for somebody born today in America. You weren't born today. You weren't born yesterday. You were born probably 60 years ago. You have made it, and you need to start your life expectancy based on your point today going forward, not as if you had this chance of dying between 0 and 60, because you didn't die between 0 and 60. You're here listening to this podcast, reading the book. You've already beat the odds where others, unfortunately, have not, which means your personal, just your longevity in general, is longer than at age 78. I use some Social Security statistics. On average, it's 84 years old. There you go. Little spoiler alert for the book. On average, it's 84 years old. But more importantly than realizing that the average you're reading in the newspaper, you're reading in the news articles online, doesn't apply to you, is you need to get your own personal longevity estimate. Are you in great health or not so great health? Are you a smoker or not a smoker? Are you male or female? I had David Blanchett on the podcast. I had him on the podcast a couple times, and he is very much on this kick of advisors, financial advisors need to use accurate life expectancy estimates. And the way he figured out that they're not doing this is he looked at, got some data from, I forget if it's a MoneyGuide Pro, Fidelity, eMoney, some calculator, retirement plan calculator. And he said something like 90% of the life expectancy estimates end in a 0 or 5. Well, that's just not the way it's supposed to be, right? It should be only 20%. So what he's saying is people aren't putting in an actual life expectancy estimate. They're just pulling a number out like 85, 90, 95, 100. He also said something like, and I'm conflating the statistics. I don't know the exact numbers, but it's this directionally correct. Something like 90% of advisors use the same life expectancy for everyone. Well, that's ridiculous. You have 100 different clients. They're not all expected to live to age 90 or whatever it is. And again, most of the advisors, they didn't even do the difference on male versus female, right? On average, let me pull it out here. Yep, 2.5 years. On average, females live about 2.5 years longer. So you've got advisors that are picking a number like 90 or 95, and then they're using it on everybody, and they're using it on everyone that's male and female exactly the same. That's the easiest one just to think of, right? You don't even have to go into your personal life expectancy estimate. Just do a male and female difference. So his point, which I agree with wholeheartedly, is that most people, most advisors are getting longevity wrong, the life expectancy wrong. And I think it's number one because you just read the news article, age 78 is my average life expectancy. That's what the article said. So I'm going to plug in age 78. Well, that's not the case. At the minimum, you got to change this to age 84. But I encourage you to get your own personalized life expectancy estimate. And the easiest way to do that is go to longevityillustrator.org. You've heard me say it before. Go to longevityillustrator.org. 5 minutes later, you'll have your answer. And I've got resources for you. Go to Jeremy Keil, JeremyKeil.com. There will be resources for you on how to make use of the Longevity Illustrator tool and how to think about it. Because another thing I share in the book is you've got this life expectancy estimate. And the way people talk about it are like, I'm going to die at 90. No one in my family lives past 80, right? You've got these thoughts that are so certain. It's interesting. If I want to suggest to a client, I say, hey, let's figure out and plug in a life expectancy number. Their usual response is, well, no one knows how long you're going to live. So it's almost like, why bother? But then I ask them their thoughts, and they're definite. This is the number. I will not make it past then. This is the number. And it's amazing how definite someone can be when they come up with a number. But when we try to add a little bit of science into it through the actuaries tool, they don't like that so much. But here's what's interesting: it's not definite. You look at the Social Security statistics, and honestly, no one knows more about how long people live and when they die than Social Security in America, because they're figuring out, do we pay you Social Security this month or not? But you look at if you're 62 years old or 60 years old, whatever the age is, and your life expectancy, let's go with 84 right now. If that's your life expectancy, age 84, if that's your life expectancy, what are the odds you'll die exactly at that age of 84? Well, the answer is 3.5%. So 96.5% of the time, that is near certainty. Most of the time, you will not die at your life expectancy. Half the time you'll die before, half the time you'll die afterwards. And when you get your accurate number, absolutely get your accurate number, next thing you do is think about, what decisions do I need to make? How do I need to be prepared for the close to half the time that I die beforehand? How does this affect me and my family? And what decisions do I need to make? How do I need to prepare if I go through the half the time that I live past my life expectancy? What I'm almost certain about is you will not die at your life expectancy. There's 1,000 people listening right now, and I'm incorrect for 35 of you, and I'm correct about 965 of you right now. So you've got to get your life expectancy and consider what happens before and after that number. We talked about the end of your retirement. We've got to talk about the beginning of your retirement. And just like many people get, I'm going to say most people get their life expectancy wrong. Many people get their beginning of retirement incorrect. The Employee Benefit Research Institute, they do a retirement confidence survey just about every year. I think it's every other year. And pretty consistently for the over 20 years they've been doing this, they ask, when do you think you'll retire? And then they ask people who are retired, when did you retire? And on average, people retire 3 years earlier than they expect. I like to say that if you're 55 years old and you ask a 55-year-old, when do you plan to retire? They'll say 65. But if you ask a 65-year-old, when did you retire? They'll tell you 62. So on average, people retire 3 years earlier than they would expect. So here you are. How do you plan out your retirement? You're planning on retiring at 65. You're thinking your retirement is done at 78. And in reality, on average, you're retiring 3 years earlier at 62. On average, you're living then 6 years later to age 84. I've got a chart in there. We'll throw that up on the YouTube video. But on average, you're planning for, your estimate is 65 to 78, 13 years. In reality, it's more like 62 to 84, 22 years. You're planning for a retirement. And in reality, you'll live 69% longer in retirement. That's a whole nother equation. You plan out your retirement number, thinking it's the amount of money you need in retirement. But if you're off by 69% on how long you might need that money for, that retirement number of how much money do you have is absolutely wrong, which is why I think your most important number when it comes to retirement planning is retirement longevity number. Plan for, create your spreadsheets. I love when people have spreadsheets, they're planning out their retirement. But whatever age you think you're going to retire, my suggestion is just change your spreadsheet right now to 3 years earlier. That'll do a couple things. One, on average, you might retire 3 years earlier. You heard just a week ago, Anthony Napolitano, guess what? He retired 3 years earlier because the company let him off. And he was thankfully ready for retirement. I think when you take 3 years earlier, plug that into your retirement planning, you will have a more robust retirement plan. You will be prepared for an earlier retirement. You might find out, as some other stories in my book that I pointed out, is if you are ready for retirement earlier than you expected, you might retire earlier than you expected. And I've yet to meet a retiree that says, I wish I had worked longer. And so getting ready for retirement 3 years ahead of time is a great step. Take a look and figure out your own longevity, your actual personalized longevity estimate at longevityillustrator.org. And then, so now you have an accurate number, and then think through what happens if I die earlier than that, if I live longer than that. That's the first part of it, the most important retirement number. You do that first before you start going through those 5 steps. And if you'd like to learn how to create your retirement master plan and those 5 simple steps, head over to 5stepretirementplan.com. Thank you for listening to the Retire Today podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money and you will make better money decisions. Hi, I'm Jeremy Keil. If you'd like to learn how my team can help you get more income, pay less in taxes, and avoid big retirement mistakes, head on over to keilfp.com. That's KEILFP.com.